Welcome to the Hingham League of Women Voters Climate Action Forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, meaning that we do not support political parties or candidates. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League influences public policy through voter outreach, education, and advocacy. The League of Women Voters of Hingham is a local chapter of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts and the League of Women Voters of the United States. Our members reside in Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset, and all are welcome to join us. So tonight we're fortunate to have Brad Moyer here to help us understand Hingham's Climate Action Plan. Brad is the former chair and a current member of Hingham's Energy Action Committee. Their mission is to help establish energy policies that will promote the efficient use of energy and reduce adverse environmental impacts, and by increasing awareness of energy issues. He also chaired the Climate Action Planning Committee, which has completed its work by developing a climate action plan, which he's going to tell us about tonight. And he has been named the Energy Action Committee representative to the Climate Action Commission, which is now being formed as the successor to the Climate Action Planning Commission. So Brad is all energy all the time. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. So thank you, Nancy, and the members of the League of Women Voters here in Hingham. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm always thrilled when I have an opportunity to talk about this plan. As we'll talk through, one of the things I'll highlight is that public engagement has always been a cornerstone and the most important part of the plan. So I like to think I've talked to a lot of people in town, but yet there's always more that can be done. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you, Nancy, for stumbling through that rather long intro. The stumbling is my bad, not yours, because there's just a lot going on, and I'll explain what all that is. So what I wanted to do tonight is just talk about what the mission of the Climate Action Planning Committee was, as well as the successor entity, the Climate Action Commission. Give you a brief history of what Hingham has been doing in the climate action space. This plan is not the only thing we've done. It's actually the culmination of many years of great work throughout this town by many involved citizens. Talk again about the emphasis on public engagement. Give you a high-level overview of what the plan does and what it doesn't do, and that will be critical to point that out. Then we'll go through the plan structure, how to use it, the discussion of the carbon inventory, talk about the contours of the climate action plan, and then we'll actually page through the plan a little bit. We won't page through all of it. It's 140 pages. You don't have to read all of it. That is the most important takeaway. The plan was designed to be digestible. So the Climate Action Planning Committee was formed at town meeting in 2021. And it had a two-part mission: evaluate a wide range of carbon emission reduction strategies and propose measures to achieve a net zero sum of carbon emissions produced and taken out of the atmosphere. We call that net zero. You'll hear me say that a lot. By the year 2040 or another target date deemed feasible. So that 2040 date is aspirational. Most other outfits you'll hear, government bodies, Massachusetts, tend to target 2050. We in Hingham wanted to set a more ambitious goal for ourselves because things are not getting better, things are getting worse. So we're constantly falling behind our carbon reduction targets. The planet is warming faster than the experts predicted 10 years ago, and so forth. So if we can do it sooner, let's do it sooner. And so that was our goal. The Climate Action Planning Committee dissolved on July 19th, because that's when we adopted the plan and our mission was fulfilled. But we understood that just getting the plan is worthless if you don't do anything with it. So there needed to be further engagement, another body sitting on top of the plan to make sure that all those who had responsibilities under it, could be not only held to account, but also supported. And it's that latter point that is more critical. How can we continue to support the good work that the town is doing? So town meeting this year voted to create the Climate Action Commission. I'll confess, why is it a commission? It was different than a committee. We already had the committee, so we picked a different word. But it's just a group of citizens that are going to help make sure that the plan is followed through on. So the Climate Action Commission will support, oversee, and report on the progress of the Climate Action Plan. And so you can see those areas there where we'll investigate feasibility of new technologies and best practices. So when we think 2040 is, 16 and some years away, I want you to think back 16 or 17 years ago to where the world was with regard to technology, opportunity, and potential. Things change very quickly. And so we knew when we were creating this plan, it was not possible to create something that would have a detailed step and very specific prescriptions of what to do to get you to 2040, because 5 years from now, whatever we thought was phenomenal is going to be, surpassed by additional developments. Maybe different incentives will come out, hopefully more and better. So we're constantly needing to surveil the landscape in that regard and adjust the plan accordingly. Provide support to other town committees and the muni government as they work to act on the recommendations, work with businesses, residents, and organizations to help them move to low carbon and zero carbon. And then, of course, continually report out to the town so everyone knows exactly where we are and how we're doing towards our 2040 goal of net zero. So I wanted to chat a little bit about what we've done in the past to again emphasize that where we are today is the culmination of a lot of great work over years. So Hingham became a green community in 2018. One of the things that we continually try to push against is the idea is that moving to a net zero environment is costly. There are dollars expended, but it's also possible to see that as a revenue generator. So by joining the Green Communities program, already we've had $327,000 in grants, and we continue to seek grants under that program. It is a generous program in Massachusetts, and they continually fund opportunities, and they've added to that budget over the years. So if you have an active and engaged citizenry that can push for projects that will help reduce energy need and move to a net zero, there are groups out there that will support that and fund that. So we've been able to bring in a fair amount of money into the town to work on those items. The Climate Action Task Force we formed in 2020, which is what moved on to create the Climate Action Planning Committee. And all of our work was done through a generous donation by HMLP. So they funded the entire study at $80,000. They sold solar renewable energy credits to do that as they continue to move towards their own power portfolio of getting to net zero carbon sources. And we'll talk about that as we get into the plan. We've added a sustainability coordinator. We've installed EV charging stations. HMLP is ahead of the state and most of our peer towns in that 50% of their energy portfolio is now carbon free, and they continue to add to that. So we have a fantastic resource with HMLP in that regard. HMLP hired its own sustainability coordinator. Our frontline cruiser fleet is now 100% hybrid vehicles. We have a electric vehicle policy in the town where we're continually moving towards electric-only vehicles. We're even exploring that with school buses. We banned distribution of single plastic water bottle use. And we received grants to add water stations through the fields. And then our new safety facility building, as well as other buildings, have incorporated net zero design to the extent that they can. And what I mean by that is, if you're a public safety facility building, you have needs that require immediate action. Someone calls the fire department, that truck needs to get out. If it's in the middle of winter, the bay is going to open up, cold air is going to rush in. Can you heat that right away using carbon-free sources? Not quite at the moment. So that was one of the sticking points. But everything else is moving towards carbon-free energy production. So as the technology improves, Our ability is approved, and the town is recognizing that and taking advantage of it. So when I said at the outset that public engagement is a cornerstone, I just wanted to highlight what we tried to do to reach the community to make sure everyone had input in this plan who wanted to, and that there was no surprises. We tried to, I'll confess, we tried to put some scary things out there just to see if we could get people who don't like this stuff to respond, like, should we do what Brookline did and ban all gas hookups? You know, we're not banning gas hookups. But we couldn't if we want to, it would be illegal to. But maybe we threw that out to see if we could get some nibbles, like to try to engage people, you know, who might not normally want to engage on this. But we were very pleased with the outreach that we were able to accomplish. We put out a survey. We got 362 responses, which we were very happy with. We had over 40 public meetings, 3 engagement sessions presented to the select board, different town bodies, different community groups, similar to what we're doing tonight, and had public events and also published articles. So we tried to get the plan out there because the only way it's going to be successful is if everyone had input and is on board. So while I feel great about what we did, there's always more to be done. So like I said, I'm very happy to be here tonight and to any group that would like to host us and give us an opportunity to talk about this plan. So what does it do? I figured I want to start with what it doesn't do, just so we're all clear on what this plan is. The first one is the most important. It doesn't obligate anyone to anything. And that's a double-edged sword, right? So we put the plan out there, which is recommendations. What do we need to do? What do we need to act on? But the Climate Action Planning Committee doesn't have authority to bind anyone to anything. Most of the town bodies, the town committees, have what I like to call moral authority. You know, we're set up as a group of volunteers and we go out and we make recommendations and we try to pull people on board and we tell everyone what's happening. But we didn't have the authority under the town warrant article to force anyone to do anything. So the plan is all about what we can do, and that's where the oversight body and the reporting out and the constant, working with those groups who have responsibilities is critical. It does not mandate.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm getting very nervous as your feet get caught in.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to make you nervous. Sorry. There we go. Thank you. So we don't mandate budget expenditures. So no one has to buy or do anything if they don't want to. But all of that will go through normal town review processes. So we don't supplant anything like that. If we need more money in the middle of the year, we'll go to capital outlay. If we need the DPW to do something, they'll incorporate that into the normal budget process, and that will go through the usual mechanisms in town. So I see that as a positive. So there's no gotchas. There's no sneaking up on anyone. There's no slipping things in that people weren't aware of. If you don't like something or you do like something, you can engage with the town as you normally engage with the town to help make it happen. So what does it do? First and foremost, it's a call to action. It is the town's plan, much like the master plan was a plan for seeing what the future of the town might be like in 10, 20 years and so forth. This is our town's envisioning of how we can get to net zero and what it might look like. It makes recommendations for residents, business, nonprofits, and town government. So everyone who's within the borders of this town has action, a call to action associated with them. It recognizes economics and changes in technology. We're not out to bankrupt the town. As I said at the outset or earlier on, it's like we can actually have revenue generation through moving to net zero. And the long-term economics are highly favorable. Meg and I were chatting right before the meeting, and one thing that came up is in this space, long-term economics are almost always favorable. It's the short term that gets everyone tripped up because you need to expend more capital than perhaps a fossil fuel equivalent. Not all cases, but in many cases. But the payback period and the benefit within just a couple of years exceeds ultimately what the fossil fuel-based system is. But you got to get over that initial hump. And then mandate continued refinement and growth. Again, we don't know what the world is going to look like 16 years from now. Don't know what it's going to look like 5 years from now. So the plan is constantly going to be refreshed and updated. It is a living document. So the plan has at its heart what we call 6 contours or 6 components. And how we got to those is we did what lots of people do when they're starting out something and scratching their head and see, well, what does everyone else do? So we surveyed other towns in Massachusetts and elsewhere, and we took a look at their climate action plans or something that was akin to a climate action plan and said, what do they do? So looking at those plans, we saw that most of them included these 6 components. Some maybe didn't incorporate all 6, but you can see they're generally pretty popular. Natural resources, building, energy, transportation and mobility, infrastructure and waste management, and public health community preparedness. Each one of these contours has a role to play in getting to net zero carbon emissions. So we took those, we applied them to Hingham, and we came up with a focus on electricity supply, buildings, transport, waste, community, and natural resources. And we highlighted high-level overarching goals for each of those areas, and I'll walk through those in just a little bit. And we applied them to Hingham's environment. So how do these areas contribute to carbon emissions within the borders of Hingham? And that's what we focused on. Now, when I say within the borders of Hingham, just a moment to pause there, you might have heard scope definitions, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, scope 4 emissions. And if you haven't, basically, there are different levels of determining how is carbon produced in your environment. And the basic difference, we don't have to walk through what each of the scope ones are, but the basic difference is what control do you have over emissions that are produced? So our plan focuses on what we can control. So you're driving along Route 3, maybe you started in Duxbury, maybe you're heading up to Boston, or someone's coming through Hingham as they're going down to the Cape. It's a gas-powered vehicle. It's producing carbon emissions during its brief, hopefully brief. Traffic usually catches us at the exit, so maybe they're producing a lot more carbon as they're sitting in traffic on Route 3 in Hingham, but the car didn't start here, doesn't end there. We can't control that carbon emission. So we're not going to count that as we talk about net zero. Technically, it's produced within the borders of Hingham, but if we can't control it, how can we account for it? So when we talk about emissions, we talk about what are those things we have control over in the town so the plan can tackle that and reduce that. So walking through then each of the contours briefly, electricity supply, we're very fortunate that we have HMLP that has been a leader in our peer communities in looking for and sourcing carbon-free energy sources. So HMLP is a power purchaser. We don't produce our own energy in Hingham, except if you count the solar panels. So what HMLP does is it goes out into the marketplace and enters into power purchase agreements with different suppliers. And that's how it sources its energy supply and is continually looking to buy carbon-free sources. Yeah.
I've just moved here from Michigan. What is HMLP, please?
Oh, certainly. Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant.
Thank you.
And that municipal lighting plant is the critical portion. So there's what are called investor-owned utilities. So Eversource, National Grid, those entities. And then there are the municipal lighting plants. The municipal lighting plants are town chartered vehicles. So Hingham is one. We have other ones like Concord, Belmont, Braintree. A couple of others have these as well. And so they have the sole right to providing the power in the town, but they're owned by the town. So we have a very good relationship. They understand if Hinghamites want carbon-free energy, HMLP knows it needs to source carbon-free energy because that's what the town wants. So we have a lot of a great responsiveness and partnership with them because of that. Investor-owned utilities, they have some great programs, Mass Save, if you have natural gas in your home and you can take advantage of Mass Safe, please, 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 please do. It's a great program, and you're paying for it anyway. Your power rates are much higher outside of Hingham because a lot of the cost goes to those conservation programs. So if you can take advantage, do, because like I said, you're paying for it. So for the electricity supply, we're continuing to focus on sourcing carbon-free energy, but we also want the electric grid to be reliable and resilient. So if you're moving to a net zero environment, if you read about that at all, the literature is always saying electrify, electrify, electrify. The idea is if the power providers can get to clean energy, and then you electrify everything, you're sourcing all that clean energy and bringing it into the home rather than filling up gas tanks, rather than having diesel generators and things of that nature. But what good is electrifying everything if they can't get the power to your home, particularly when you need it? So we need to make sure our electrical grid is reliable and resilient. And then it also needs to be upgraded, because if you're going to electrify everything, are your existing power lines sufficient to carry the increased load? I can tell you they're not here. You know, HMLP is aware of that. You might have heard of the HEIRP project, where Hingham is looking to build the transmission line, and that has to go through Weymouth property. So you might have seen some of that if you're heading into Weymouth as you're coming across High Street in Hingham. But anyway, that's all work that HMLP is doing so they can ensure that they can withstand the increased power load as we move to an electrified environment.
And are there 4 carbon-free energy sources for electricity: hydro, wind, solar, and nuclear?
So hydro, wind, solar, nuclear, I'm trying to think.
Geothermal?
Geothermal would be one. I was pausing for a second because another one you might hear, but it's not carbon-free, are anaerobic digesters. That's more like recycling methane. So it's a good way of capturing that and using it so it doesn't go in the environment, but it's not quite carbon-free. So those 5, thank you, with the geothermal, are the ones that you would focus on. Buildings. Buildings is without a doubt our biggest challenge. The most energy use and the most carbon output is coming from our buildings. So that'll be the focus of the Climate Action Commission as to how can we knock that down. Energy efficiency is always step 1. The plan kind of calls this negawatts. How can you achieve negative energy use? If you're not using energy, you don't have to worry about if the source is carbon intensive or not. If you can reduce your energy, then you save carbon output, regardless of the type of energy source. So we always want to target energy efficiency first. So technology and design. A lot of buildings are old in Hingham. We do build new ones though too. So yeah.
When you say buildings, do you mean houses as well?
Everything, any structure in town. So how can you use technology to assist older homes, historic homes that have federal restrictions on how they can be updated and modified? What can you do there, to help them take advantage of carbon-free energy sources and also increase their energy efficiency? And then, of course, we build new buildings too. We've built quite a few buildings, in the past, 20 years, and we're going to be doing so in the upcoming years as well. So taking advantage of existing technology to help the new construction that we're working on. Large users. So we're fortunate within Hingham to have a great industrial base. So, as we do. And so big energy users, they will have different needs, different solutions required than a homeowner would. So how do we target large users to get them to move towards energy efficiency measures, to get them to move to carbon-free sources? And there are actually some great programs out there that can help them do that, the PACE program being one of them. So we'll be working with our commercial colleagues to help move them in that regard. And then the building code. So the building code put out the state, there is a specialized opt-in stretch code, which won't move the needle as perhaps much as we might have liked, but Massachusetts is always working on tinkering with and improving the building codes. So we always want to keep our eyes open for them and look for opportunities to adopt them. But we don't always have to wait for the Massachusetts building codes. There are things we can do within our borders to improve those as well. So like I said, buildings will be our biggest challenge.
Before you,
Sure.
the last bullet says, consider future limitations on new fossil fuel hookups. So on our street, they're putting in new natural gas lines.
Yes.
We don't have the connection to our house. And so what are the considerations for new fossil fuel hookups, and why couldn't your commission address
Fossil fuel
natural, yeah.
So there is, in order to allow, let's say Hingham was intent on banning natural gas hookups or any new kind of fossil fuel hookup, we are precluded by law from doing so. The Massachusetts legislature would need to pass a law to allow us to do so. They did that with Brookline and a couple of other towns that have pioneered this, but they got kind of special permission. I see Joan Moschino here, so I may do an audible at some point, she wants to give us some details. But right now, we would not have the ability to do that if we wanted to. The hope would be that we wouldn't necessarily have to, because we can work out incentives and opportunities to not need to go to a fossil fuel hookup, even if you have the choice, because we have either great incentives at HMLP, or the technology is so much better and cleaner to move to heat pumps or something like that, that we don't even need to address that. But it's something there that if we're not making the progress we like, we always go to carrots first, always carrots first. But if we need to pull out the stick, that's a possible stick.
So future is the key term.
Correct. So transportation, so electric charging. Want to move to EV vehicles as much as possible. What are the opportunities that you have to charge them within town? What if you're passing through? What if you're going out shopping for the day? Did you charge sufficiently at home? If it's wintertime out and you have, range anxiety because the efficiency decreases a little bit in the wintertime, how can we get more charging stations accessible within the town? How can we encourage EV adoption? Easier for personal passenger vehicles. Now imagine what vehicles the town acquires. Fire trucks, dump trucks, things of that nature. Technology is getting there, but not quite there yet, at least for most of those vehicle types. So we got to be mindful of that, look for opportunities for pilot programs. Easton was one of the first to pilot all EV police cruisers, and they had a positive experience with that. So kind of seeing what's out there and leveraging and how can we bring that into Hingham.
So in Concord, for example, they've moved to all electric school buses. Have we had a consideration of that?
Yep. So we've been looking into that. The Energy Action Committee has actually been quite focused on seeing what we can do to get electric school buses in there. And I have a reach out tomorrow to the school committee on that very point. So
Concord did get a grant from the state to do that, so as a test program. So that it is something that's evolving, but that was
Yeah.
a unique situation.
I see.
yeah. Yep.
And to test how the batteries would react in the cold weather too, in the
Yes.
winter,
Yes.
because that's a major factor on a
Sounds
school
efficient.
bus
Yes.
conversion.
She knows a lot.
What also then can we do to encourage carpooling and ride sharing opportunities? And then public transit. So how can we improve public transit? Public transit, anyone who deals with MBTA, it's a hot topic right now, so looking at MBTA to be a leader in helping this, I know we're all skeptical. But hey, we've got the solar array at the West Hingham parking lot. That was an MBTA project. So give credit where credit is due. So there are possibilities there and opportunities. We also thought, geez, what can we do with regard to a regional electrolyte service? Can we have an electric vehicle that starts out in the shipyard, travels down through Main Street, hits Linden Ponds, hits Derby Street, hits Penniman Farms? What can we do to kind of encourage, reducing load on Main Street, because Main Street just seems more cars and more cars every year. So what can we do to encourage something that would be economical and carbon free? And then there are a lot of ideas out there for personal rapid transit and renewable mobility options. So we've looked at a couple of those and we'll continue to do so. Some of the challenges there are making them Hingham friendly. And what I mean by that is there are options out there that would look to supplant and cover roads. So imagine like a monorail running throughout all of Hingham, and think, would you want a monorail running throughout all of Hingham? Maybe not. So a lot of ideas out there, but we're looking at them all. Yeah.
Just one quick question about the expanding the public access to charging electric vehicles around town.
Yep.
I've noticed that some of the ones that the town have installed are just level 2 chargers, and they're not the fast charger level 3. And I'm just wondering why wouldn't we, if we're gonna make the investment, put in the level 3, it's a quicker charge, and then.
Absolutely. So some of that is cost. So some of those level 2 chargers were made possible by grants, and that's what the grants would cover. Others are getting the power for a level 3 charger in that particular area there. So the infrastructure might support a level 2, doesn't support a level 3. How much do you need to tear up and change and disrupt in order to get level 3 in there? So there have been some of those issues as well. I know HMLP is focused on that. They know the level 3 chargers are where you kind of have to get to. So right now, the level 2s that they put in, the idea was put them in like the shopping areas where someone's going to be parking and out of their car for like 2 hours or something like that, if they're using the downtown area. So maybe a level 2 isn't such an issue then. But if you're going to like, say, have it off Route 3 or have it off the highway or something like that, hopefully if we could put something in Derby Street, it's like, well, it's shopping, but also right off the highway, you're going to want a level 3 so people can get in and get out. So yeah, definitely aware of that issue and working on it. Yep. So waste is definitely one of the contours. On the good side, waste produces, I think we have the chart, I think it's 1% roughly to carbon production in the town. So not a huge impact, fortunately, but that doesn't mean there's stuff that we can do. So adopt a pay-as-you-throw or SMART program. Some peer towns have done that with success. The idea being, and again, no one likes paying more. And it doesn't necessarily mean you pay more, but you pay up front. So rather than just run to the transfer station, the dump, drop your stuff off, pay-as-you-throw program charges you per waste removal. So if you're charged at each point in time, you're incentivized to reduce how much you throw away, and it just encourages behavior. The idea isn't to cause you to pay more than you do through your taxes for the transfer station as it is, and the stickers you get to use it. It's just that if it's on a per transaction basis, there's an opportunity to rethink it and to realize some savings. So it's a behavioral switch, and it's had success in other towns. So we want to take a look at that.
Does that really work, or is that like on the
Yes.
bills? Is that like on the bills and things like that, where it just becomes a function of behavior as opposed to?
It does work. I lived in a town once that had a pay-as-you-throw program when I was in upstate New York, and you had to buy stickers, and you had to put them on each bag. And you go and you buy a ream of stickers, and you're like, I just paid what for these stickers? And you rethink how you actually dispose of things. One of the best ways to combine these two is you think pay as you throw and composting. Do you ever throw away a lot of rotten fruit? A a watermelon that maybe you didn't cut as soon as you should, think of how heavy that is and how much space it takes up. It's all water. It's almost all water. So if you compost because you don't want to have to pay to have it thrown out if you let it go bad, you just saved yourself a lot of money and you actually did something better for the environment, and you're going to get some decent soil out of it when it's all done. So it does, they have like, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? These like beneficial, effects that layer on each other when you just rethink your behavior.
Is Hingham considering banning single-use plastic bottles?
So it already has. It already has.
No, just water bottles.
Just water bottles, I'm sorry. Yeah, just water bottles. So if you're going to get like seltzer bottals, those you can still buy. It's just kind of like your single use, like your Poland Springs or whatever, that are banned. Okay. Recycling, Hingham actually does pretty well with recycling. But we can always do better. There's always an opportunity for doing education. A lot of us, I think, do wish cycling. I'm guilty of that, where it's like, can this piece of plastic be recycled? Oh, no, but I'll throw it in anyway, and let's hope for the best. The answer is probably not. Or if you don't clean it well enough, maybe it's not recyclable. So there's opportunities for better education there, and maybe we can get creative as to how we do things currently at the transfer station that might help to increase uptake in recycling. And certainly we can do things in the public spaces. Right now, if you're in a lot of public spaces in Hingham, you just have a single garbage disposal. Can we put more recycling options out there? And as I mentioned, composting, maybe there's an opportunity for doing something town-wide composting. So right now at the transfer station, of course, we have like all the grass clippings and the leaves and so forth. But if you don't want to do composting at home, food scraps and other opportunities, perhaps we could do something like that at the transfer station. So that's something that we will continue to look at. And then I mentioned earlier anaerobic digesters and waste-to-energy alternatives. So one of the largest sources of methane production is going to be refuse. So if there's a way to capture that and at least use that in a way that does not release the methane into the atmosphere, and methane, of course, is far, far worse than just carbon dioxide for a greenhouse gas, for capturing heat in the environment.
The regional anaerobic digester, Senator Patrick O'Connor and Joe Moschino recently spoke at Linden Ponds, and they're both greatly in favor of a regional center for that effort. And I think if Hingham responds to that, we can move more clearly in that direction.
Fantastic. When did you speak at Linden Ponds about that?
Monday.
Monday. Oh, okay, great.
Very good.
Okay.
Feels like it was so long ago.
That's excellent. Thank you. I appreciate you raising that. So community. So what can we do from like an outreach and education standpoint? Again, the plan is very focused on how we get the public engaged. Plan's no good if it sits on a shelf and no one knows about it. So we're always focused on getting a sustainability director in place. With the approval for the budget increase at town meeting this year, there's now money to continue with the sustainability. I believe the role right now is sustainability coordinator consultant. It's on a consulting basis. That contract is up in December. We're hoping to be great if Ginny could continue on. But the town is still working on the budgets with that, but at least we have funding for it. Education and marketing campaigns. We need to let the town know what progress we're making. So how can we do that in a way that's accessible? Maybe a website dashboard, other things that we can do we'll be thinking about. Public pathways. So how can we encourage getting people off the roads? How can we encourage using the wonderful natural beauty that we have in this town? What can we do about bike lanes? Just taking a side of road and painting a bicycle there doesn't really make it a bike lane, but we're kind of challenged with how much space we have on our roads in this town. But is there anything else we can do to encourage that. Are there some ways to rethink our public spaces? You know, the TODs, a transit-oriented district, is basically a way of saying, how can we take public spaces and create more greenery and have other mechanisms than cars to get people there so that they can actually walk around and enjoy the space more. Air quality. Gas leaks is a problem in this town. We have lots of gas leaks. I can show you a map. We have a map in our plan that you'll see a lot of little red dots. You know, so what can we do to stop those and reduce those? They're not within our control. That's all run by National Grid. But, you know, always looking at how we can pressure to have that corrected and reduced. And then engage with the state as much as we can to decarbonize their energy sources and our gas lines.
And they're not ways to enforce the fixing of broken pipelines?
So the pipes are owned by National Grid. That infrastructure is owned by them. And Hingham's not the only one that has gas leaks. A lot of places do.
Does the town fine them for polluting and for environment?
I don't believe we can. The most leverage that we have over them is, like Liza, you were mentioning about the gas lines going into your road.
Because of a bad leak.
Is it because? Got it. So National Grid needs to provide notice to the town whenever they want to run gas lines because we own the roads. And so we have some say at that point where they have to come before the town, make their request, genuflect a little bit. And so we have a little bit of pressure that we can apply at that time, but we can't just say, you have a leak in our town, you're going to fix it or we're going to kick you out. You know, we can't do that.
Brad, there's actually, Brett Ori Ehrlich put this legislation through a while ago. They actually requires National Grid and Eversource to map all of their leaks, which is why you can find that now, and to categorize them. And they are duty bound to repair to prioritize for the ones that explode. So it you know, public safety first. Yeah, public safety first. So you know, what it is always being sure that when you smell the gas leaks, you should, just a little PSA, you really should always call National Grid because they will come out and investigate. And they're always reassessing. And so if something ever shifted where, you know, it went from worrisome and maybe like more public health to like actual dangerous, you know, then they will actually be required to come and do it. There's a whole scheme about it. And if you're concerned about the gas leak in your town, just let me know. And we can also liaise with National Grid just to make sure that they're paying attention to it. So. Just call my office.
Great. Thanks, Sean. You know what? And I've been remiss. Harbor Media is recording this, and there's a microphone that people are supposed to speak into. No, that's me. That's me. So if you raise your hand, I'm going to hand you a microphone. It won't project your voice or anything. It's just...
I just have a question. A few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 it was, I remember seeing something in the Globe about our town being one of the highest with leaks. I also noticed that I was on a walk and there was a white car that had like a bullseye on the side of it. And I chatted to the gentleman because there was a gas leak in front of my house for a very long time and we'd called on it and nothing was really moving. And when I mentioned it to the gentleman, by the time I got home from the walk, the street was being dug up. I happened to live on Main Street across from the fire department. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but who paid for that? And do we still have access to that source? Was that something that was done by the town?
I don't know. I'm still intrigued by that car with the bullseye. I'm like, where do we find that person?
I think it says Target on it. And seriously, it had something, but that's what he was doing was, when I spoke to him, he was going around and noting the gas leaks in our town. Maybe it was like 8 years ago. Yeah.
I can explain to you.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Thanks, John.
Related to this, in my latest National Grid bill, there was a little newsletter from them, a friendly newsletter, that said the homeowner is responsible for the gas line from the main in the street to your house. And I have a very, very long driveway. So I thought, I'll follow the information that they said. They said, call your furnace, whoever whoever put in your furnace. So I did that. And the woman said, this is the first call I've ever, I don't know what this is. The gas company said to have someone inspect it annually. They didn't even know what I was talking about.
Huh. I mean, I confess I don't know. I mean, what you explained to me sounds right to me. I know we've had residents go before the select board before who have had issues with regard to that portion that you're talking about, the gas line coming from the street into their home, to talk about what could be done about it and so forth. But yeah, it's kind of shocking that she didn't know anything about it.
A
But
very well-known firm that everybody here uses, and she didn't know what I was talking about. So anyway.
Of course, safety first, but are we getting past repairing gas leaks? We're just perpetuating this infrastructure that we're trying to get away from, and it's very expensive to repair some of these leaks. Does it come to a point where your driveway is very long? It would be better for you to put in a heat pump and get rid of the gas service to your house for an individual house in a case like that. Or if this leak is at the end of some line, does it make sense to just say, we're not fixing it, we're cutting it off before then? So I think the gas leaks, I was very excited about it years ago, and now I'm starting to think, well, why are we continuing to fix this? We have to keep things from blowing up, but and it takes a while. But at some point, can you say, we're not going to fix this, we're going to cut the gas off at this point, and the people, who are serviced by that are moving on to where they're going eventually, hopefully soon anyway. So
right. And to your point about heat pumps, if you think back to when we talked about buildings as our biggest challenge, as a homeowner, the number one thing you can do after energy efficiency in the home, remember efficiency first, is to put in a heat pump. And if you have a gas line, the mass save incentives for actually switching to a heat pump are very generous. Hingham HMLP also has its own incentives for moving to a heat pump if you do not have natural gas coming to your home, if you're not serviced by an investor-owned utility. But the mass save ones are just almost can't be beat. So that is your first go-to, exactly that. Yeah.
I was just in Maine where we had
two hurricanes, Lee and Philippe, and the people who had generators were quite comfortable when the power went out. The people who did not have generators, which was most of us, were without power for 15 hours, and we couldn't use our heaters or our stoves or whatever. So do heat pumps require electricity?
They do. They do. So they would be impacted by that. So one of the possible solutions or ways to think about that is solar and battery storage. So if you have a diesel generator and you're sitting that outside your garage because you can't bring it in, so you have all the gas, in your house, and you hear the loud noise and the roaring and so forth, and you hope you have enough fuel, and you hope you can get to the fuel if the roads are damaged because trees have fallen. If you have a solar system and you have battery storage, charges during the day, excess flows into your battery storage, you have that overnight, and then the process repeats when you have sunlight again the next day. So solar and battery storage is an excellent alternative to a diesel generator.
Or I was thinking of an automatic generator fed by gas.
Those absolutely too. You have those that if you have gas lines running into the house, you have those systems that you can install, that immediately turn over. They're excellent systems for providing energy in the home. They are also expensive to put in, and they're still carbon intensive.
When you speak of solar battery storage, does the Hingham Municipal Light Plant allow for someone who has solar to pay back or have the excess energy purchased by Hingham?
They do. There is a net metering incentive. So if you, that is, yep. I don't recall the exact figures off the top of my head, but essentially, as I mentioned, when we talked about HMLP, they're always looking for carbon-free energy sources.
Yeah.
You can buy that outside of town. You can buy it in town. So if you have a solar array and you're producing excess solar, HMLP will happily buy that from you.
Good. Very good.
In Maine, they don't.
Oh, sorry. I can take that in case anyone has a question. Thank you so much. Okay, so the plan structure. So deep but accessible. Like I said, it's 140 pages, but please, 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 please don't read all 140 pages unless you really want to, but you don't have to. So we developed it in a way that, you can get the gist of it from spending time with the executive summary, which is 6 pages. Maybe you want to see exactly what the plan is calling for. There is an appendix in the back that for each of those contours lists out all the detailed recommendations that the plan makes, and that's 18 pages. The body of the plan that walks through kind of like there's a lot of narrative around the contours that I just discussed. So I was bringing some of those points out, but there's even more in the plan. That's the biggest length, which is about 73 pages. But even those start with a 1-page call to action. So again, we're trying to make it easy to digest. And then there's the carbon inventory, which goes into a great level of detail, creating the baseline. Because if we're talking about how do you get to net zero, well, where are you today? What are you measuring against? So we needed to do a detailed carbon inventory to figure out how we're producing and where we're producing carbon so we know where to tackle and how to tackle it to get the biggest bang for our buck.
So could we look at that and actually find how many school buses are actually out there and how often they're used?
So the plan won't have it won't tell you the number of days and all that kind of stuff, but it will basically tell you the total hours that they've been operating, or really the total fuel that they've been using, and then count that towards the carbon inventory. Yep.
Good.
Brad, is that up on your website now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And we'll hop over. So you'll see we've got an intro, executive summary, the contours, implementation considerations for how you continue to manage the plan, the tracking and the metrics, our action items, and our carbon emissions. So I'm going to hop over to the plan just so you can see what it is like. And to Joan's point, so this is our website on the town landing page. So if you were to go to government, all the town committees are there. They're all alphabetically listed. So you could click on the Climate Action Planning Committee, and right there, you can grab the plan. All right. Let me just make this a full screen. All right, so we're just going to hop through a little bit. So helpful there are, unfortunately, a long document. There are a lot of acronyms or terms in here. They're all listed up here at the outset. So we threw out a couple of things already. I mentioned the PACE program. I mentioned transit-oriented districts. I mentioned Hingham's infrastructure project, HEIRP. Those are all inventoried up there in the center. So you can almost even just read the acronym chart, pretty brief, and you'll learn a fair amount as to what's there. So on the executive summary, I mentioned that you're going to have a call to action at the beginning of each section, and it looks like this, and it targets what residents can do, what businesses can do, government, schools, and then we even add a little something in there for the innovators if they are reading our plan or watching things we need them to do to help move net zero forward within town. So at each of the beginning sections of the plan, you'll have this. So if you're a resident, all you need to do is focus on that residential section, and it'll give you an idea of what you need to accomplish.
It mentions right there, provide a curriculum to the students. Is that actually in place?
So it's not in place. That's one of the recommendations. However, while there's not a soup to nuts curriculum, there are definitely things the schools are doing in that regard. Hingham High School has a fantastic green team that's very involved. At one of our public engagement sessions, it's funny, we had a little celebration for the CAPC on the production of the plan, and we played CAPC Jeopardy. And one of the questions was, who is the youngest citizen of the town? What age was she when she joined one of the sessions? And it was a 12-year-old. So on her own, she came to one of our public engagement sessions, and she was asking about electric school buses. So the school does a great job of talking about these issues and generating interest among the student body. And I will say, too, the school committee is represented on both the Climate Action Planning Committee and will be on the Climate Action Commission, and they've been great partners throughout. Really, everyone has. I've been extremely pleased with the level of engagement that we've received.
I heard that story that Joan Moschino visited a fourth grade class in Hingham, and she's speaking to them about climate change. And one young man stood up and asked her, "And what car are you driving?"
Yes, he did. And after I responded that I'm still driving my 2008 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I started to try to explain about embodied carbon and why we don't get rid of anything before the end of its useful life, and they're all like, "Crap, I mean, really." And the teachers still laugh at me to this day.
If it makes you feel better, coming tonight, I was prepared for, so what have you done with your home? What do you drive? So I have some similar answers to you.
They ask great questions.
Yeah, Nancy.
So in the residential portion of the plan, does it talk about different residential uses like gas dryers, gas stoves, and the relative importance of getting rid of those, how much you can save for different home improvements?
Yeah, so it won't, it's very hard to provide specific dollars and cents because everyone's situation is unique. But it does go into detail in the building section on like the heat pump technology available. So it's not only just air source or ground source heat pumps for heating and cooling your home, but certain appliances have that as well. You can buy a heat pump dryer, so you don't, if you have a natural gas dryer, you can get a heat pump dryer, heat pump hot water heater. So it does mention those things available, but as far as the type that you get, how much that costs, how much your existing one would cost, what you would replace it with, we can't really do that at an individual homeowner level. But we have resources to point out how to figure it out.
So I noticed you're talking about switching to heat pump appliances and not electric appliances. Is it not as...
So a heat pump is a type of electric appliance. That's right.
Like a straight switch from a gas dryer to electric dryer, for example. Is that not as beneficial?
No. It's not that. Again, you want to move to an electrification model, assuming HMLP can supply us with clean power sources. The going with like a heat pump versus an electric model is both a carbon play and an efficiency play. So you'll use less energy going to a heat pump model than you would with an electric model. Heat pump technology, depending on the type of unit and the type of weather you're at, can be 4 times more efficient than any fossil fuel or electric appliance as well. It's just the nature of the way it operates. It actually takes less energy to bring in heat or cool, depending on the environment. Did I answer your question, Nancy? Okay. I'm sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, the net zero.
Yep.
If I drive an electric car, electrify my whole
House, but I still like my gas grill. There are a few things that would be harder to give up. I mean, driving an electric car and cooking with induction is actually an improvement. And, I don't really think about how my heat is delivered as long as I'm warm and the benefits of getting your AC. And so there's a lot of benefits and everything, but you come down to those few last things like the gas fireplace and the gas grill. And so when you say net zero, how do you balance out maybe the things that aren't
Understood. I like to kind of answer this question with
I guess that's far down the road because I don't have heat pumps, but
it's like, we're not out to ban s'mores. It's like you want to have a campfire and make some s'mores, have a campfire, make some s'mores. It's more of like, what can we do to get like the big ticket items taken care of? If you got a heat pump, drove an electric car, put energy efficiency in your house, and you have a gas stove, I'll take it. I will take it. Right, exactly.
Like carbon capture, I just think of those as kind of excuses, but is that something I can look forward to and turn on my gas grill and think?
Sure. So I would say carbon capture is important. And when you think about Hingham, how blessed we are with the amount of carbon we can capture because of the land within our borders. Wampatuck is huge,
Okay, well, that's reassuring. I wasn't thinking of what is making up for my gas grill if I get everything else done. It's Wampatuck, okay. I do.
So one of the things we do have in the plan when we talk about natural resources is personal landscaping. What do you do at your home? I'm going to make up something. Let's say you're fortunate and you have 2 acres of land in Hingham, a lot of land, and it's all grass, Kentucky bluegrass, and you fertilize it and you have sprinkler systems and it's running all the time. It's an absolutely beautiful lawn, but that's all it is. Imagine what you could do from a carbon capture standpoint with planting some trees, some bushes, some flowers. Not only would it look amazing and probably better than just an open grass field, but there is a lot of benefit on that carbon capture point as well. So look for those opportunities just in your own home. And those actually do make a difference. They can go a long way.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see if I can get this all on one page to make it easier to scroll through. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So I'm just paging through quickly just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So these are all the contour discussions, and you can see there a lot of little call outs, a lot of little nuggets of information contained throughout. Here's one of the examples for the one-page call to action for each of the contour sections. So you can read the area that's relevant to you and figure out at a high level what are things that you should be looking for or working on during the life of the plan. Since heat pumps came up quite a bit, we do have a robust discussion on heat pumps and how to build an energy efficient home. A lot of considerations. Some of it's technical. One of the benefits of having an MIT architect on our committee, we're very fortunate in Hingham with the people who volunteer their time, very talented group. So you can go as scientific or as high level as you want. We've got that in our plan. And there's again, a nice little overview and discussion of how heat pumps work and the efficiency and so forth. So definitely look to heat pumps as a homeowner as your first place to go. So I'm just going to hop down because much of this, there's your gas leak map. There's your gas leak map. Yeah. I know, as bad as, if you can make out the land masses there, as bad as Hingham is, we're not looking so bad compared to some of those other towns. Yeah. All right. So I want to get.
All those gas leaks that are mapped that have been deemed not to be safety hazards?
It depends on the severity. I'm not quite sure what criteria they use to determine the severity of a leak. But yeah, I'm with you. I would think any gas leaking is a hazard, right? But here's an example of the detailed appendices for the recommendations. And we'll just walk through electricity supply for a second. So we have what is the implementation step, a rough time frame for how we think it can or should be accomplished. Some of them are ongoing. Some of them could be done in the near term or medium term or long term. What does near, medium, or long mean when you think about our 16-year time frame goal? A near term is probably like 1 to 3 years. Midterm is you're looking at like 3 to 10. Long term is that remaining time frame. How do we measure our success against the implementation of that recommendation, and who's responsible? So the Climate Action Commission, one of the things I mentioned that we'll be focused on is how do we report out, how do we support, and how do we help hold to account everyone who has responsibilities under the plan. And this is our go-to. This is our cheat sheet. We know exactly what needs to be looked at and who's responsible for it and when it's supposed to get done. So I'm just carbon emissions inventory. So when I said, I'll scroll this up a little bit higher, sorry. So when I said buildings are our biggest challenge, 69% of carbon produced in this town is produced in our buildings. I mentioned waste was just 1%. So opportunities there, but maybe not what we should be focused on first. Transportation is at 23%. And then because our electricity supply is already decently on its way to being carbon free, that produces currently 7% of the town's emissions. Yeah.
So when you're saying the percentages, is that town of Hingham buildings, or are you talking about all the residences and all of the businesses here, or just municipal?
Every building within the border of Hingham. Yep. Now, how do we produce that number? How do we get to that? I confess there's a fair amount of estimating that does have to go into that. Not all of it, of course. So there is a tool called Mass Energy Insight. So all of the information that HMLP has access to gets uploaded into Mass Energy Insight. Everything from investor-owned utilities also gets uploaded into Mass Energy Insight. The challenge was oil heating. So oil companies don't report energy expenditure into Mass Energy Insight. And we actually tried calling some oil companies and said, can you give us a rough estimate? We don't need names, we don't need addresses, and they don't exactly play ball, But there are other ways to kind of get at those estimates. There are a lot of resources, both from a government and a nonprofit level, that produces estimates based on car usage, based on home usage, based on weatherization. Was it a warm year? Was it a cold year? How do you normalize that over time? And I don't need to bore you with the details, but if you're interested in everything that went into producing that carbon inventory and the assumptions that were made is described in this section in the plan. And then the town also has a spreadsheet that, we consider part of the plan. It's just not incorporated in here because it's a very long and complicated spreadsheet, but that does all the calculations and has all those elements in it. And like I said, we had to make estimates, how much do people drive? What does it mean to take a ferry versus what does it mean to take a bus versus the commuter rail or something like that? We account for those, but we're not going to have specifics, so we had to make some estimates. But we overall feel very good about the granularity we were able to achieve and how we were able to isolate the sources. So at least the main thing, it tells us where we need to focus our time and energies and how we need to tackle this. And that was the biggest benefit. Yeah.
On that last one was kind of small, but it looked like the total was going from 300,000 to 100,000.
Oh, that's better.
Is that better?
Oh,
So you're talking about the
not such a big deal.
total emissions? Yeah.
200,000 to 195, that's not a big difference.
No, I think the
Going in the right direction.
that's just it. That's one thing where we can definitely take heart in, is that we are going in the right direction. And you may have mentioned, may recall I mentioned the Green Communities program, to which we're a part of. Now that only focuses on municipal energy expenditure, not the entirety of the town, which this focuses on. But in the 4 years we've been part of that program, Hingham's reduced its energy use in the municipal space by 14.4%. And when you think, we've actually added buildings since then, and that's incorporated into that. So we're making great progress. And we are making and have been making good progress on reducing our energy use overall. But more to be done.
What is GHG?
Greenhouse gases.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, no problem. And here's, this is the section where we get into buildings. How do we estimate? If you want to know how we figured out fuel oil, there it is. We had excellent consultants help us with this, Energist, and there was a fair amount of a give and take. Like they said, the EPA measured this or so forth, and we're like, that sounds low. I think we use more oil than that, and we would talk through why, and we were able to get it to a fair estimate of how we think Hingham
Brad, this is
makes use.
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that pretty much takes us through the plan. The inventory is still going on. Oh, this is a Sankey diagram, which is a helpful single view of understanding the types of energy that we use and how much that composes of our total profile. And then who is making use of that and what ratios to understand our total carbon emissions. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I can talk loud. Somebody told me that there is now a home energy coach that you can request from the town to come to your house and go through it with you.
So,
Not Mass Save, I think.
Yeah, so there are a couple things. So HMLP, everyone is an HMLP customer. Well, almost everyone. So there are a couple homes on High Street that are actually National Grid Electric, but Hingham services them. So anyway, small little trivia. But everyone who's an HMLP customer has access to Abode. Abode is a company that they use and contract with. They will do energy audits in your home. They will also do a technology overview. I had an hour session 3 weeks ago to say, I'm ready to move on heat pumps in my own home. What do I need to think about? Here's my home specifics. It was an eye-opening and very helpful conversation. Take advantage of those resources. I have lived in Hingham for 17 years, but moved into a different home 2.5 years ago. First thing I did was have a boat come over and do an energy audit of my home, and immediately did some weatherization projects and got some rebates for it. So definitely take advantage of those. Now you mentioned coaching. So there are citizen groups in town. One of them is Hingham Net Zero. Hingham Net Zero is working on a program to create energy coaches. So these are individuals who have passion for this, might have technical expertise as well in their professional or personal careers. And they will walk you through their own experiences and things that they've done and help you consider projects for your own home.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Julie, sorry.
Thank you. Actually, it's two questions, but if we only have time for one, I understand. But you mentioned, the study, you got a grant from HMLP to do the study, and you had a consultant working. Can you also speak to the people at Town Hall, the staff from the town who worked on this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's like a tough question because you sent me up to miss somebody.
No, I mean, and
we had
saying
a
not
lot of
naming
people.
names,
I'm
but
joking.
I'm just saying like
joking.
the sort of quantifying the effort put in by town, the municipal employees or
Absolutely.
people over at HMLP as well, if they were involved.
Absolutely, yeah. So they definitely all were. So members of the committee alone, HMLP was representative on the committee. So Tom Morahan, who's the director, all of our meetings and a voting member, and Brianna Bennett, who's a sustainability coordinator at HMLP, was also heavily involved, a fantastic resource in the town. We're lucky to have her. So HMLP was there for all the meetings. School committee was present at the meetings. Many of the other town committees were as well. The select board was very much involved. Art Robert, the assistant town administrator, has as part of his portfolio this type of work in the town. So he was very much involved and supportive. So the sustainability coordinator consultant for Hingham, Ginny LeClaire, she was present at all the meetings, and she was formerly an Energist consultant as well, so was involved at the outset in that capacity. And Ginny would meet regularly with the heads of DPW, the heads of the fire department, police, so forth, to kind of like get this information, get their input. They all provided comments on the plan, or at least the sections for which they had responsibility. We didn't want to surprise anyone. So if you saw that appendix and it said HMLP is doing this, then we're going to learn about it after we produce the plan. They were all informed in advance and offered an opportunity to comment and weigh in. Conservation, planning board. So almost everyone who has anything that could be impacted thus by this plan was involved in the process.
Okay, great. And then my second question is, this report is fantastic and very eye-opening. Can you tell us what you're taking it on the road, what your plans are, what groups that you plan to continue to reach out to, or is there going to be a town forum? The town is also going through hearing from the Master Plan Implementation Committee, Liza, I remember, but they're going out and reporting the master plan to the town of Hingham at the same time. So I'm not sure if it's overload or there are synergy opportunities, but
Right.
thank you.
So first and foremost, we need to form the Climate Action Commission, which we are waiting on the last appointee from the town. So that has 2 moderator appointees, 2 select board appointees, and then the remaining appointees are also the same town committees and bodies that were involved in the Climate Action Planning Commission. So we just have 1 appointment remaining. I expect that any day now. Once that appointment is finalized, Climate Action Commission will have its kickoff meeting. And one of the first things we'll talk about is how we're going to focus on public engagement and what we're going to do there. So while I certainly have ideas, I'm but one of 9 voting members, so 11 members on the committee, and I can't speak for what that group may decide to do, but public engagement is very much on the top of mind, and we'll figure out, how we can interface with the master plan work, not overlap. There's also municipal vulnerability, which is also the town is working on. We always have to be careful that our effort is not confused with that, although they are, of course, interrelated. So that's going to be another thing we have to think through. What I mean by that is, the most obvious example, sea levels rise. We're a coastal town. What do? How do you prepare for that? That's not a carbon reduction plan. That's a climate resiliency plan or a municipal vulnerability plan, which Hingham already has. But again, they're interrelated. It's easy to confuse the two. So we also have to work out our messaging and how we're going to handle that. I'm sorry, I'll take it. I didn't know if anyone had any questions or.
Any more questions for Brad?
And that pretty much takes us through the plan. The only other thing we have in here is, if you're interested, I mentioned we had survey results, 362 individuals. What I find most interesting, here's a little trivia for you. So when asked, what is your biggest climate concern? What do you think was the number one climate concern mentioned in the survey result?
Air quality?
Heat.
I'm surprised. Those who said heat and hot days, yes, it was actually heat and droughts. And the reason why is when the survey went out was 2 summers ago when we didn't have rain for a month and a half. If you asked this year, it might have been flooding, you know, but so anyway, little trivia for you. All right, but then so that's what I've got. So, thank you, everyone.